All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order for April 11th. This is our regular council meeting. We'll start our agenda tonight with a moment of reflection before we get into the approval of the agendas. So we'll take a moment now. All right, thank you very much. Going on to the approval of the agendas, we have a consent agenda. Is anyone wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? I was wondering if we wanted to pull the letter from Fox Creek regarding utility fees. Is that something council would like? I think it'd be good to pull that anyways. We can see if there's more discussion on that. I think it's a very relevant agenda item if we want to add our voice to that. Beyond that, anyone prepared to make a motion to that end? Along with pulling that one item, Councillor Wilson. Motion's on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Regular meeting agenda. Besides adding the one item from the consent agenda, is there any other additions, changes? Anthony Burnett.
Just adding one item to in camera under personnel.
Okay. Okay, anyone prepared to make a motion on the agenda with one additional consent agenda item and an in-camera? Councillor Dressler makes a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, for the good of council, does anyone have something they'd like to share with the whole of council? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. This week I had the opportunity to attend the Easter festivities that were held for the community at the WA Day Gym. And that was hosted by FCSS and the Kids First Family Center. And I believe they had over 200 people show up for that. It was quite the rambunctious event. There was kids everywhere and it was awesome. It was really great. So thank you to them for putting on that great event. And then this weekend as well, I had the opportunity to volunteer at the Elks Casino fundraising event, which is always a good time as well. There was lots of fun had there, and we have some extremely generous members of our community, both business and individuals, who supported the silent auction and coming to the event itself. So thank you to everybody who made that event a success, because it was really good and probably one of the better years they've had. Since the last 2 years, we haven't been able to do it. So yeah, thank you to everyone who attended that.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Henniger, sorry.
Sorry, where? Just wanted to speak on Wednesday, April 20th. So not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday is the community cleanup. So that's going to be a great event. Afterwards, there's barbecue and everything like that at this building that we're in right now. So GR Davis. And so, yeah, that gets going. Pardon? And it starts here too. So they will provide everything, but bring your own gloves. So next Wednesday, April 20th at, I believe it's 4:30 or 4 p.m. I'll double check on that. But
Sorry, that starts at the curling rink or here? Okay, very good. And you can guarantee sunshine? Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Dressler?
Just a big shout out to Jennifer Malloy from CAPG. She sent an invite out, which I extended out to everybody else on council. which was a webinar on hate crimes, anti-Semitism, catcher on the phrase, the essential to the threat of civilization. Was a really good, well-done webinar, and I thank them for that opportunity. Their spokesperson that they had for doing that was very well known. I've attended some of his webinars before, so it was greatly done. There is a recording of it, so if anybody wants me to share it, by all means, let me know and I can CC it or email it over to you.
Very good, thank you very much. I did get an email from, I'm not sure which office this was from the province, but there is an open house tomorrow for real property rights. It's an invitation. I believe it sent it to council and to the mayors and reefs from southern Alberta. I think it's one of the only ones in the far south of the province. So if anyone wants to attend one of these meetings, I think tomorrow night it's at 7 to 9, and I believe it's at the community hall. So if anyone's interested in attending that, that's an opportunity for everyone. Any other comments? Councilor Dressler?
The other one was I'd like to extend a great gratitude and thank you to our member of Legislative Assembly, Roger Reid, who attended the town of Fort Macleod, who gave out some grant funding that was well needed within our community. The mayor can correct me if I'm wrong on how much the community got, but I know our handy bus service received some funding, as well as the town of Fort Macleod and the MD of Willow Creek. So Marianne Sandberg, the Reeve for the MD, and the mayor both were there for some photo ops with Roger Reid, and of course the Handy Bus Society.
Yeah, I believe that was the, I remember that acronym for the grant. Basically, it's Joint ACP grant. Is it? Yeah, so intermunicipal anyways, so drainage study for the south end of Fort Macleod. So I believe that one was the big one at 200,000, and then after that there was a few smaller ones. So that was very good. Yeah, I think Councillor Edwards already mentioned the fundraisers in the community. I think the other one was the Stars Tournament that happened the week before. That was a major event in the community. Kudos to them and the work they did to pull that off. Sound like a lot of teams and a lot of people involved. So that was great to hear as well. All right.
So if I could just confirm, I did look it up, and it's 4:30 start for community cleanup at this building here in the parking lot, and then the barbecue will be just in the fenced-off area, just at the south end here.
Very good. I'm sure there'll be more notifications that go out on that too. Okay, very good. If there's no more for the good of council, then we will move on to our delegation for tonight. And tonight we have Lance Wallach with us from Benchmark Consultants.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. So thank you for coming, and I don't know if administration wants to make any introductions before we get started. Anthony or Adrian? Otherwise, the floor is yours. Chris, yeah, sorry.
All right, so Lance Walagi is our assessor for the town of Fort Macleod. He's been working with us for the past couple of years, and we enjoy working with Lance and the company. They're very knowledgeable, easy to have a conversation with, ask questions of, and I'll just let him do his presentation. You'll enjoy yourselves. I know you guys are going to like this one.
All right, Lance, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. I'll try not to let you down, Chris, on the presentation here. Big shoes to fill. The last time I was here, I gave council a very brief overview on the assessment function on an annual basis. And this gets a little bit, it's actually a shorter presentation, but it is more specific on things that'll really matter to council. And that is in informing council of the year-over-year changes to the assessment base. So we're looking at the difference from the 2021 tax year to the 2022 tax year. And there'll be three areas of focus here. The first is market changes. So there are increases in the assessment base to properties that haven't changed in details. Basically, the properties have remained the same since the previous assessment cycle, and basically just looking at what these properties would expect to see by way of an increase from the previous year's assessments for the 2022 tax year. The second is assessment growth. So every year we pick up any additions, new construction by way of single-family dwellings or additions, any renovations. So just informing council on what the assessment growth is for the current tax year. And then lastly, wrap that all together in an overall assessment change, which will include both the market changes on the residential and non-residential side, all of the assessment growth, as well as the linear designated industrial property assessment, linear and non-linear from the provincial assessor, which comes to the town. So just before I get into the market change, just a few key things to keep in mind as we go through the presentation. I mentioned this back in the fall, but for the current tax year, the 2022 tax year, the assessments are reflective of the market value as of July 1st, 2021. So we're thinking about market conditions nearly 9-10 months ago, and it's based on the condition of that property December 31st of 2021. One little unique thing with the 2022 tax roll, which is different from previous years, is because land titles is so backed up on their transfers, we're actually not seeing transfers of properties come through until 3 to 5 months after they've been purchased on a multiple listing site or privately. That really plays into the assessment function because all the assessors in Alberta use the transfer date as the sale date for analysis. So really, when we say July 1st, 2021, it's potentially a little different because of the lag in the transfer dates. So what we're kind of hearing from feedback is we expected maybe higher. Why isn't it higher? And it's just because there's still a little lag for those sales to come in, unfortunately, for land titles to catch up. And of course, when we talk market value, we're simply talking about the most probable price that a property would sell for from a willing seller to a willing buyer. And one of the unique characteristics of the assessment function is that assessments have to be prepared using mass appraisal. So mass appraisal, as you'll remember, is the process of stratifying similar property, analyzing the sales data or cost data or income and expense data within that stratification, building a valuation model, and then applying that model back to all those properties. And this ensures fairness and equity in the assessment function. So moving into market change. So again, last year's assessment was based on the market value of properties, July 1st, 2020. This year's assessment will be based on the market valuation, July 1st, 2021. And it's important to note that when we talk about market change and the difference in market conditions from the past year, properties don't increase or decrease at the same rate. Depending on certain locations or certain physical characteristics of real estate, oftentimes what you're going to have is properties increasing or decreasing differently year over year. And so when we look at market change, what we should expect is a range of percent changes within the town. And that's ultimately what we're going to see here. So if we move to our first chart, this is the residential properties, the taxable residential properties and their market change year over year. So on the left side of the graph, you'll see number of residential accounts, and on the bottom, you'll see percent change ranges. So for example, on the left part of the graph, you see that 30 residential properties will be experiencing a year over year change less than 0%. Moving to the right, you'll see 322 properties will be experiencing a market change or year-over-year year change between 0 and 3.2%, and so on and so forth. So the intent of this particular graph, it does reflect normal distribution with respect to percent change, but the key takeaway from this graph is looking more or less at the middle part of the graph. And you'll see there that the large chunk of the residential properties, or the majority of properties, are going to be increasing year over year if nothing has changed to their property, by way of renovations or additions, between 3.2% and 6.5%. So when you're asked at the grocery store, what should we expect for a typical year over year change in the assessment? Typically, you're going to see for the majority of properties, they're going to be increasing between 3.2 and 6.5%. Overall, you'll see that it's a little bit favored to the higher end of that range. Overall residential assessment base in total is up 5.7%. Moving on to the non-residential market change. So this is the industrial and commercial properties, taxable only, of course. You see that the non-residential base historically is a little bit slower to react to increases and decreases year over year. It's a little bit of a slower trend. So we are seeing obviously increases in value for the non-residential properties, but it is at a slower rate. So focusing again on the middle two charts in the graph, you'll see that typically for the majority of non-residential properties, they're going to experience anywhere between 1 to 5%. And overall, it favors a little bit on the lower end of that range, coming in at 2% total increase overall. So these particular accounts are just accounts that have not experienced any change year over year. So it wouldn't include any new accounts or any properties that were in partial construction from the previous years. So ultimately, it's just if you have a property last year and it hadn't had any change to this year, they would be included in these charts. But it's good that you bring that up because the next section obviously is the assessment growth. So when we're looking at what has been added to the assessment roll over 1 year, under the residential assessment class, you'll see there that there was $4.2 million in residential assessment. So as a percent of the previous residential assessment base of almost $265 million, that's about 1.6% assessment growth on the residential side. Typically, when I do these presentations for municipalities, I would say historically it's around a 1% is what you would typically get. In the current tax year, we are seeing percents that are a little bit higher than typical, as of course the market is increasing and you have a little bit more confidence in the real estate market, so you're seeing a little bit more growth, a little bit more investment into houses. On the non-residential side, overall assessment growth was just under 2.4 million. So as a percent of the previous assessment base of 94.5 million, it represents 2.5% assessment growth, which is a fairly strong number for the non-residential. And you'll see in a slide or two ahead that a lot of that growth was due to the new Dairy Queen that was completed. So typically you're not going to have a new Dairy Queen come online every year. So that's typically why you're going to see a little bit higher percent for this year than maybe you normally would. But just a few notable assessment growth items or properties that hit the roll this year. So just a couple of single detached dwellings. Some notables here on Linden Road, Avro-Anson Road, and Deer Path Meadows. On the non-residential side, again, you'll see the completion of the Dairy Queen on the right and 2 partially constructed industrial warehouses in the middle and on the left side there, Manning Avenue and 8th Avenue. So moving into the third item, so wrapping everything together. So we're looking at the year-over-year change of the assessment base from the 2021 tax rate bylaw to the declared assessment roll as we see it today. And this again includes all assessment change due from market change, from the assessment growth, and you'll see now we've added in the provincial assessment for the linear designated industrial property and the non-linear designated industrial property. So if you're not familiar with those two items, so the nonlinear designated industrial property, there's only two accounts in the town of Fort Macleod. One's the substation and another is a separator building. So the total assessment for those is roughly 400,000, so very minimal. On the linear DIP side, though, it's roughly about 14.6 million. So as a percent or as a represent against the total assessment base on the bottom there at 398 million, the linear DIP, nonlinear DIP, they don't make up a large chunk of the assessment base, but it is a little assessment from the province. On the top of the line there, you'll see that residential and farmland has increased from 263 million to 284 million, an overall change, 8.1%. On the non-residential side, going from 110.5 million up to 113.8 for an overall change of 3%. Overall, with all of the taxable assessment base, you're looking at an increase from 373.7 million to 398.2 million for a total percent increase of 6.6 year over year. And with that, your worship, I open the floor for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Does anyone have some questions they'd like to start with? I have a couple in my mind. I was curious on the percentages. Like on the last slide, 11, we have an 8.1% change for residential. Slide 8, it's 1.6%, and slide 6 is 5.7. So in my mind, when I'm thinking about it, it's like 5.7 is just for existing structures, correct? No changes, no new structures.
Correct, yeah.
So wouldn't the assessment growth always be equal to or more than that 5.7?
No.
That would mean that we're demolishing buildings in order to get it down to the 1.6, no?
No. So let me try to explain again. So the two numbers are basically different, right? If we're looking at like the overall change of the residential assessment base, it'll be made up of the two components, right? Your market change and your assessment growth. And then the combination of both obviously would equal the overall. So you could have your assessment growth be higher or lower than the overall market change, depending. So you have years if the market is compressing a little bit, you'd have a year-over-year change of market change going down, whereas your assessment growth is typically going up.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not sure. I'm just curious on the percentages because non-res, it's a lot closer together. It goes from 2 to 2.5 to 3.
2 to 2.5.
But on the residential, it's quite a jump up and down, but it's comparing the same growth year over year. So I'm just wondering how there can be that much of variation in the percentages.
Well, it can happen. Like they shouldn't, or it shouldn't be expected that they'd be close, right? Like you could have the market going up, market value properties going up 20%, but your assessment growth only going up 1%. The two numbers are different. We're splitting out the two numbers and bringing them together on the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because even slide 6, it still says assessment change, right? So I know it's market, but it's still based on assessment change.
But this doesn't include anything that's new.
Right. So then if the assessment change for everything that's existing is 5.7, then the new should also increase that even more. But then on slide 8, it's only 1.6% growth.
I'm not sure I follow you, but overall, right? Like if we combine back the increase due to market conditions or market change, i.e. the market value change, and then we add in the assessment from what's come online, the new. So now we have our graph here. You can see on the right side, it's now 8%, right? The combination of both would be higher.
Yeah, Okay. I'll maybe have to get some more clarification. That's fine.
Sure.
The other question I had is, it'd be interesting to see these slides with kind of year over year changes. Is that easy to add to these slides?
Like multiple years.
Yeah, just so you could see, like, because I think we were negative growth in a while for residential, negative non-residential assessment, but now we're in the positive territory, which is good. It's neat to see those trends, to see where they are, because I think non-res, for example, has been pretty much in the positive territory for quite some time, but residential has been more in the negative territory.
Yeah, I could see that. We could definitely look to bring in 3, 5 years. So I could always add in another after this, just kind of comparing maybe 3 to 5 years, if that helps. Yeah.
I think it's good to indicate trends for sure. Cool. Anyone else have any questions? I can see why Chris likes these numbers. They're a lot of fun to look at. The other one I was thinking about was comparables to other communities. Like, I know when our auditor comes, they like to compare it to other. I think that's also a good indicator for us. If we're the only ones that are experiencing negative or positive growth, then that would maybe change the way we look at how we're doing something. Is that something you're allowed to share, or is that?
Yep, for sure. There's every municipality receives their equalization report, which basically after the assessment base is equalized, you know, every municipality in Alberta's assessment base is public.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the advantage of doing the assessments to many of the southern Alberta communities. So we have the information readily available. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that would be fun. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions? This is your chance. Chris, go ahead.
I just have a quick, I probably could have just asked Lance this over the phone. But so with the economy the way that it is, what are you kind of forecasting for communities for next year?
Up. It's going to be up, maybe more than this year. As I mentioned, the lag 3 to 5 months in land titles, certainly these numbers would have likely been higher had the titles been transferred quicker. And so what we're seeing is the transfers that are coming through now would have been in, November, December-ish. And all trends are looking very, very strong for next year. So I would anticipate up.
So really land titles that are closing and being issued now is what's determining our 2023 year. Because it's about 2-3 months ahead, July 1st.
Correct, yeah. Yep, you're bang on.
Councillor Edwards?
Are the land titles backdated at all to like when they should have been done? Or are you just, like you're saying the November, December sales are coming through now, but is the land title backdated to November and December so it stays in the year that it should have actually happened? Or do they bring that through to the new year?
It basically would look from our point of view as if it had transferred, 3 to 5 months later. Yeah. So it clears or gets processed in say March or April, but realistically, when you look at when the property was sold on MLS, and you talk to vendor purchaser, everything had been done, many, many months ago.
Councillor Dressler?
So when you're saying things are going up, when you're saying they're going up, are we looking at this as a good change? Because the thing is when you look at it right now, you look at multiple listings and stuff like that, we're seeing just bare bones lots, nothing on them, 60,000. Then we see some that are in the 30 to 40,000 mark. Then we see houses that are up on the market that are fairly recently redone or remodeled, and they're in the $350,000 to $400,000 mark. For first-time buyers that are living within the community or people there, is this going to be something where you're saying you're going to see a big jump and spike Is that gonna change the market value a lot that first-time homeowners may have to look at, or those who are interested in buying properties and building on a home?
It'll certainly, it's certainly tougher for those folks trying to break into the marketplace. And I think of some other municipalities that have tried to bring in some affordable housing, some housing that it's easier to break into, right? I think of some manufactured home communities, and I know we have some here, but you're seeing a little bit more of that in, say, like a Coaldale and a Tabor, for example, where there is a little bit more emphasis on that because obviously with prices going up, it is difficult for homeowners to get in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, can we go to slide 8 quick? Slide 8 is showing the 4.2 million in growth, correct?
Correct.
Over the 264 million.
Correct.
But slide 11 is showing about 41 million in growth.
$41 million in growth?
Between the 263 million and the, or sorry, 263 million and 284, so it's like, sorry, 21 million.
So yep, so that number includes both the assessment growth and the market change.
Okay.
Yep.
So if we take off the previous number of about 4 million, so that means there's been $17 million in market.
Just based on increase in market value. So homes that were essentially the same as last year, the assessments have now come up, as you mentioned, the difference, which would be approximately 17 million, and that's just due to purely market conditions, increase in market value.
Okay. Okay, so I think what was happening, I was flipping them around.
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right, any other questions or comments on this?
So one last thing, we did receive an email from the government of Alberta, and in the 2022 provincial budget, they budgeted $9 million to handle that land title office issue. So it's supposed to be fixed with this $9 million by December of 2022. So let's all watch for that.
And I think it was last week or the previous week that Edmonton actually went back to work in their offices, so that might change things as well.
All right, well, I think that's all for questions that we have tonight, Lance. I'm sure we know how to get a hold of you if there's any other questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the notices will be out soon. So as always, any questions that you get from the ratepayers, feel free to pass them on to me and my staff, and we're always available to answer any questions and concerns that anybody has.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to
This was very
seeing
handy
you.
too.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Always looking to improve things, right?
Thank you very much again.
All right. Have a good evening. All right. Next order of business, we are moving over to a public hearing for bylaw 1952. And we'll request a motion from council to open the public hearing for bylaw 1952. Councillor Van Hagbos makes the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So this is a public hearing, and we'll ask our Director of Operations, Adrian Pedro, to introduce this bylaw to us.
Good evening, Council. This is the public hearing for bylaw 1952, known as the Waste Management Bylaw. In this version, we have changed section 9 to provide some clarity on the yard waste cleanup program, and we have added a table of contents. So we have made those changes to the documents. Other than that, the document remains the same.
Okay, thank you very much. So being this is a public hearing for bylaw 1952, is there anyone wishing to speak for or against this bylaw? And I do not see anyone in the crowd. So on that, we'll ask for a motion from council to close the public hearing for bylaw 1952. Councillor Van Hagmos makes a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And consideration of the public hearing that we just had, bylaw 1952. First reading has been passed. Does administration or, sorry, council have any questions for administration on this bylaw? Or being prepared to make a motion for second reading on this bylaw? Councillor Edwards makes a motion for second reading. Is there any questions on bylaw 1952 for administration? Councillor Dressler?
So there'll be, in my regards to my email, for 0.9 or 9.0 yard waste cleanup, did we have a ballpark figure for that in regards to what the cost is?
We don't at this time. I think the intent would be to, because this is a big change of a program, let's keep that in place for now. We'll do some better tracking in terms of what those actual costs are, and then we can make a decision holistically about that particular program.
Could I just add something to that? One thing that we're hoping to do here is to have the ability to track more accurately the hours that go into certain items like the yard waste cleanup, so we can know dollars, machine hours, labor hours, so that it makes it more, the information more accessible so that we can make these decisions. But yeah, given the big change in the service, we decided that it would be best to maintain that level of service going forward until we have a more thorough review of it.
Okay. Any other questions? The email we received today from a resident, has that been clarified? I think there was regarding a spring and a fall community, what did they call it? Back alley cleanup. That's been clarified.
Right, so that's the yard waste cleanup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be spring and fall, as we're currently doing. Okay. Any other questions, debate, discussion? Seeing none, the motion is on the floor. Call to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Anyone prepared to make a motion for a third reading on this bylaw? Councillor Wolstenholme makes the motion. For third reading. Any other questions or debate on bylaw 1952? Councillor Dressler?
Sorry, mine's not opening up. Can somebody just show me what there is for enforcement of the waste in the alley in between the timing of that? So if our bylaw enforcement has to do anything with that, what the fines and all that is for misuse of the alleyways for stockpiling waste?
Sorry, I think that one's going to be covered in the community standards bylaw and part of the unsightly piece within the community standards bylaw, not so much the waste management bylaw.
But it is waste and it's improper disposal.
I agree with you that the term waste is fine, but I still believe that the fines and the enforcement of it are covered under the unsightly bylaw and the community standards portion of that.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, if there's no further discussion, debate, or questions, then we'll call it the question. This is third reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, moving on then to new business. Sorry? First reading was previously done, yeah. Thanks for the question. Carrying on to new business, item 1 is term review, and I will pass this off to Anthony Burdett to be able to talk to us about our strategic plan.
Thank you, Mayor. So we'll just pull this up. Now, today's going to be a brief overview of the results from the 2018-20 to 2022 strategic plan. Council and administration will have a more in-depth dive into the performance from the last 4 years as we springboard into our future strategic planning, which is underway. So here we go. Oh. Was it not on? There's an on switch. There we have council in their magnificence. So as you can see, the strategic priorities from the last strategic plan has facilitate business and residential growth, invest in and maintain town infrastructure and improve appearance, elevate public relations, social responsibility, and safe community. So under the facilitate business and residential growth, and I will just go through and highlight a few items under the priorities and the plans which were made, just kind of high level. So solidify the development and readiness of municipal property. Previously, the council has worked with the planners for the Macleod Meadows, and fortunately, very soon we're going to pick that back up, but there was a lot of progress made in the last 5 years, and so that's a good success from the previous plan. Under also the intermunicipal development plan was finalized, which is a very important document for the growth between us and the MD in establishing the guidelines, and that was a big accomplishment given the time that it took and the difficulty that were, some differences were eventually overcome, and so that was a good progress in those areas as well. We'll skip ahead to a few of the other successes that we saw. One of the ones that I think was really well done is improving the ability for business to prosper in Fort Macleod by implementing the business tax incentive bylaw, which I think gives businesses a great opportunity to get started with those tax incentives. And administration has been meeting previously and currently with multiple interested developers, specifically to engage on the 320-acre property south of town and other properties in town as well. The next section will cover a few items here is investing in and maintain town infrastructure and improve appearance. Under manage the necessary ongoing upgrades and maintenance of the town's infrastructure. As we know, infrastructure is incredibly important, and we can't, just because we can't see it, doesn't mean we don't have to give it its fair attention. So onboarding of the asset management program MuniSite is currently underway, and that's going to be really helpful to manage the infrastructure and projects going forward. A big piece of infrastructure is the outdoor pool, a big success. And a lot of people, me personally, my family, my kids would give you an A+, a 10 out of 10 on that one. They really enjoy the new pool. The other one that I wanted to draw attention to is the consistent sidewalk replacement and road program implementation going forward. Under identify and invest in new infrastructure as needed in a fiscally responsible manner. We're underway now, but the plans were in place to add the solar panels to the plant to offset the electricity usage there, which I think is quite progressive and really a forward-thinking infrastructure development for the town. And in the enhance the beauty and appeal of the town, the community standards bylaw 1920 was established, which has helped us clean up a number of properties and move things forward. Also, community day cleanups being held and continue to be held going forward. And one that I received personal gratitude for from another person in town was the transformer wraps installed at the 9 locations. They thought those were absolutely wonderful and really bring out the beauty on something that's completely normal, a transformer, and making it look better. And all these little things really can add value to our community. As we've been able to see, using a collaborative approach to develop and implement a new marketing plan with emphasis on cost and effective promotion. Our new slogan, Belong, and the new logo that was established I think we've done a good job at promoting that and being out there with the billboards that change periodically to really to spread the message of the community with the belonging and that Fort Macleod is here and everyone's welcome to live and do business here. The next section, elevate public relations. I went the wrong way, sorry. My apologies. I've got some notes here on paper that I'm trying to follow through a little bit of. So improving upon the experience with satisfaction level with those who interact with the town, obviously a very important one for administration. And so the implementation of a new complaint process and implementing some new technologies, not to mention all staff participated in a training to deal with harassment and conflict resolution. We want to make sure that every interaction with the town staff and the residents and those citizens is as positive as it can be. We know that sometimes we're dealing with people who are a bit upset and they're very passionate, and so we take that into consideration and trying to deal with them as professionally as possible. Next, the development of enhanced communication methods. COVID was great at springboarding us into a lot of new communication methods and making us get things online and allowing the information to get out there quicker and more readily available with Zoom and live streaming, YouTube, and we're, I think, successfully implementing the Voyant Alert, and we're seeing the results of that now, doing some testing now, but previously getting that set up was very important, and emphasizing enhancing some of the old communication channels as well. Oh, sorry, I missed one. Under seeking to foster broader mutually beneficial relationships with our neighboring communities, council and administration members attended a Truth and Reconciliation event in Lethbridge, among other things, in recognition and participation in the Orange Shirt Day. And that's one I personally, we're going to continue to see some progress made in those departments with our neighboring communities. I feel very important. Socially responsible and safe community. So to preserve and share our local assets, both tangible and intangible, with supporting the app On This Spot, they were able to really highlight some of the pieces in the historical Main Street of Fort Macleod, and working with the Heritage Management Plan, Phase 1 and 2 completed, and working with some of the environmental committees and initiatives. Really, a lot of the focus in the historical assets that the town has, and trying to use those to preserve them and to share them with our community and other communities as well. Other worthy initiatives, the weed control program expanded, water rate billing structure to reduce consumption, all important. Next, to encourage and provide to the highest degree possible a safe, inviting, nurturing community for all who live in and work and visit the town of Fort Macleod. I think we were able to see some good strides in this area by establishing the Safe Community Task Force, and we're getting that, we're working towards getting that back up and running since COVID halted a few things, but I think there was some real success in getting rid of some problem groups or tenants, or getting rid of some of the crime in the town of Fort Macleod, and allowing that the feeling of having a safe, involved community, that we don't have to worry quite as much about what's going on. And so we're going to continue to work in there. Also, a lot of good work done with the RCMP, advocating for the RCMP, and I know that my predecessor Sue was very much liked working with the RCMP, and she did a great job being up to date on what was going on in the town. So there's your whirlwind of a review, and like I said, we're going to go into a much deeper dive and review some of those items to see where we could make some improvements, and review some of the places where we might not have accomplished as much as we would have liked to. And that's all going to help us in our efforts to develop our strategic plan for the 2022 to 2026. Here we have a roadmap. So right now we've, working on the term in review and the assessment to kind of recognize some of our strengths and opportunities and really working with what Fort Macleod has to offer. We're currently working a lot on the engagement piece and getting valuable information from our stakeholders, from residents, from community groups, to make sure that we're hearing their voices and doing what's in their best interests. Once we've gathered that information, there's going to be some compiling of that information, working towards understanding the information and seeing what are the prevalent priorities from the community members and the community groups. After which that point, we will get together as council, and that's really where we get into the meat and potatoes, and we try to align the council's priorities with the vision and direction that the town is looking for. And then once that's done, the final review and reaching back out to community members with some brief sort of, how do we do satisfaction survey if they feel like our direction is in line with what the majority of the town is looking for, so that we don't miss the mark. And then we're hoping that the strategic plan we can approve it this summer. June is most optimistic, but I think summer is more realistic, so that we can get underway with the new strategic plan. Now, you will see in the paper this Wednesday that we've put out an ad for Wednesday, April 27th, 2022, 6:30 to 8 p.m. that we're going to host an open house, and that's for community input, vision, and planning. So we're going to have an open house where we'll have some ability for those who wish to participate in that fashion to come and share their thoughts and their directions and priorities. And a lot of the input will be gathered through surveys that'll be emailed out as well, to really try to gather as many voices as we can. So there we have it. That's the tip of the iceberg of the challenge that is the strategic plan for the spring, but I think we're well underway and things are going well so far. I'm open to any questions if you have them, but like I said, we'll have many further discussions on this going forward.
Thank you, Anthony, for that summary. I think that was good, just to review some of the things that we have been able to get through. Is there any recommended motion that you have for council? Maybe to accept the roadmap as, in principle, as our, do you need that? Just so you know you have council support for this.
Yeah, that would be appropriate to accept the roadmap as our schedule.
Yeah. Is anyone prepared to make a motion on that? Councillor Dressler, to accept the strategic plan roadmap as presented?
Yes, Your Worship. Are we going to do those as information or accept as information? Okay, I will go with that.
Any questions on the roadmap? Concerns? Thoughts? So there'll be a bit of info in the newspaper, you said, this Wednesday? Is that right?
Yeah, so the information in the newspaper will be the publication of this in-person meeting, just so that everyone's aware, has plenty of notice if they'd like to come there.
Start planning?
Yep.
And do we have suggested categories or topics that we'd be looking for feedback on? I think we want to, I don't know how defined we want to be, but just so people know what we're looking for.
Sorry. So what we're gonna get the questions and the surveys out before that event, and so they will have access to kind of that information beforehand, so that they can be thinking about it and planning for it. So we're not just leaving the door wide open, but that they can kind of see what generally have been the priorities, what things have worked in the past, and so they can kind of have the direction where council has previously gone to kind of help them identify if those still fit with their priorities.
I think along with that, if we can get an email to council, I think it's important for council to promote amongst their committee reports. So all the committees we're part of, to make sure they're aware of what we're up to, so that they come out perhaps as groups as well. Any other thoughts, comments? I think the more engagement, obviously, the nicer. I think last time we did this, it was a little bit tight at the end of the year, and we didn't get a lot of community engagement, but I think we can do better than that. So, Councillor Hanniger?
Just for accessibility and providing surveys, I know a lot of the feedback that comes from the community is, I don't know how to use SurveyMonkey, or I don't want to go on the internet, and that is completely fine. So I'm just wondering for accessibility, how you're going to help those kind of groups.
Yeah, I guess I thank you for that note. Yeah, essentially, our initial idea was that the survey would have a lot of the information and kind of the direction, and if they preferred, the open house and the planning session would have a lot of the same type of information. For someone who's completely comfortable with just doing the survey, they could get their voice heard without coming into the open house. But for those who would prefer, but I appreciate that thought, because we can get that information out to the people in another way, so that they can be prepared for the open house without having access to the survey. Thank you.
I think it's good to kind of screen this through our public engagement policy too, just to make sure that we're following good policy on that as well. All right. Any other thoughts on this? There is a motion on the floor. I look forward to this, and hopefully we can get some good feedback. All right. Motion's on the floor. We'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, bylaw 1958, 2022 mill rate bylaw, and we'll ask our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, to speak to this.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, good evening, Council. For your viewing pleasure tonight, bylaw 1958, 2022 mill rate bylaw is on our agenda for first reading. Lance has gone over the assessment, the changes in the assessment for market value, for growth, residential, non-residential. Things are looking very positive for the town of Fort Macleod in that regard. So based on that and the dollars that we need in our operating budget to balance the budget out, I have brought this information to the Infrastructure and Finance Committee, and we discussed what a reasonable percentage increase for our portion of the mill rate would be. As a reminder, the mill rate is made up of the municipal portion, which funds our operations. It's also made up of the education taxes, which goes to the province for education, and the lodge requisition, which goes straight to the Pioneer Lodge for their operating budget. So our portion is the municipal portion, and at our Infrastructure and Finance Committee meeting, Council decided that we would increase both the residential and non-residential municipal mill rates by 2.5% each. So that amount, along with a hard look at the operating budget, and it balances out the budget for 2022. So this evening, I am bringing forward the mill rate bylaw for first reading. The only thing that's really different about the mill rate bylaw this year is we have a minimum tax in our bylaw for properties that have a very low assessed value, and we implemented the minimum tax in 2014 before I started with the town, and we've never changed it. It's been $300 for 8 years. So I am proposing that we increase that amount because over the last 8 years, the cost of services in the town of Fort Macleod and administering taxes has increased enough that we should consider an increase. So I proposed that I calculated that a 2% increase on that $300 for the last 8 years would bring that amount up to $348 this year. There's not a lot of properties in Fort Macleod. I think we have our revenue from minimum tax properties is about $14,000 a year. So it's not a large piece of our tax revenue. But I think it's important that that minimum tax be increased to show that there are increased costs that go along with all properties in the town of Fort Macleod. So that's for council's consideration. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about that. And then going forward, so it's not such a forget about it for 5 years and then 1 year I bring it back and go, oh my gosh, I forgot to increase this for the last 5 years. Could we just jump it? I'd like to just put it forward that every year when you get the mill rate bylaw, that minimum tax would increase by 2%, which I think is a fair representation of cost of living normally. And it would be, since it's not such a big budget item, I think it would be a reasonable amount. So enough said by me. So if you have any questions about the first reading of the 2022 mill rate bylaw, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. So request is for motion for first reading. So is someone prepared to make a motion for first reading on bylaw 1958? Councillor Henniger makes that motion. Any questions for administration? On that minimum tax, would it not be easier just to tie it to our mill rate increases? That way, if it's more or less, then it would be comparable to all the other properties.
So yes, and I can break out which properties are assessed minimum tax, and I would figure it out from like both residential and non-res perspective, and then each of those, there'd have to be two minimum taxes, one that was for res and one that was for non-res if we went that way. So it's just a little bit more administration and work, but I mean, if you think that's what you want to do as council, then we can make it happen.
Okay. No, I think like you said, it's not a big amount, but if we needed to increase mill rates for some reason much higher than 2%, then you can do that as well, right? But okay. Any other questions on bylaw 1958? No other questions on our mill rate bylaw?
So I'll just jump in again because, you know, I like to
Yeah.
talk about this stuff. So council also received a copy of comparatives of other communities and their mill rates. Just as a gentle reminder, we are ahead. So what we're proposing for 2022, the comparatives are for everybody else's last year because we don't know what they're thinking about for this year. So it shows on the bottom in the yellow for Fort Macleod, 2.5% for both municipal res and municipal non-res. So the rates that come to us and the money that comes to us, those rates for just our portion of the mill rate, they're still very comparative with other communities in our area. It's kind of hard to compare apples to apples because Coaldale or Colehurst has got different. It's a different community than Fort Macleod. They're a bedroom community of Lethbridge. Pincher Creek, well, they've got a Walmart, so I mean, I don't know. But even with this chart, at least you can see we're well in the ballpark, and our residential mill rates are just low, like just so low compared to other communities. And I think that's something that we need to shout out to people and remind them of, that we do have very low residential mill rates, which makes us a very favorable community to live in and pay property tax in. And we have a boatload of amenities, so people should come and live here.
I know who our marketing champion is, right? All right, any other questions on the comparisons or the historic numbers that we've had? I think the historic numbers go back since 2017. Those are nice to kind of keep an eye on as well. All right, if there's no further questions, is there a public hearing that should be advertised with this as well? No? Strictly just first reading? Yeah, they can. All right, so motion's on the floor. We'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Going on to bylaw 1957, a Union Cemetery bylaw, and we'll ask our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, to speak to this one as well.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. So before you tonight is an amendment to our Union Cemetery bylaw. As council knows, we have done an expansion at the Union Cemetery. As part of the expansion, we are developing a scattering grounds and memorial bench area. We're very excited about it. The concrete was poured last year. This year it'll be landscaping. So because we have those programs now, that area and a scattering ground, we need to amend our Union Cemetery bylaw to add those two features to it. So I put some wording in about the scattering grounds and about the memorial bench and tree program. You probably are not going to see the brochure for the memorial benches come before you. It's more of an operational thing, but I've ordered the benches and they're awesome. So we're very excited to beautify that area. We're hoping it would be with some landscaping, maybe some trees, some shrubs, and some concrete benches. We hope it'll be a very nice, peaceful area for people to come and sit and reflect on their loved ones. So any questions, let me know.
Anyone prepared to make a motion for first reading on bylaw 1957? Councillor Dressler makes a motion. Any questions? I have not done a lot of research on scattering grounds. That's kind of the first time I've seen this come up. What's kind of the background? Like, obviously most communities are doing this and it's well received.
So I think as council knows, funerals and burials it's quite expensive, and we like to offer options to people in the case that they maybe don't want to bury, or they've cremated and they do want to be, scattered near loved ones or in the area of loved ones. So it's just something that other communities have offered for quite a while. And we just wanted to give people some options. We have a lot of area in the new expansion, and they're priced very reasonably. We still have some columbarium niches, so people have lots and lots of options, and we think it'll be good. We just had to, it's funny because you have to write in there that you have to remind people not to scatter ashes in windy conditions. So, yeah.
So how do you do that in Southern Alberta?
I don't know. There was no enforcement.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to, for sure. Councillor Dressler?
I think this is a nice addition. I know for a fact that through the Alberta government, if you wanted to go into the Porcupine Hills, you can get a permit to scatter ashes of a loved one or anything else like that. So I think this is a great benefit to our community. Allow people to do that, because there are many that have different wishes to have their ashes spread somewhere else. And I think it's a nice touching fit, because again, I can use, for instance, my father. He wanted half his ashes spread in the Yellowcomb Valley and half of his ashes spread in Hawaii. And I remember taking ashes back on the plane to go all the way to Honolulu was not a great thing and milestone for my mom, but she did it and paid the fees and had his ashes spread in Honolulu. But it was, again, costly, right? Especially when you're transporting human remains. So kudos to you, Chris, for looking into this.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else prepared to me, or sorry, any other questions, comments? Councillor Edwards?
I just wanted to say how glad I am to see that we have the memorial benches and trees, because that's a common request from people in the community wanting to honor those who have passed. And so I like the idea that we have somewhere that they can do that, and it's we already have a plan in place, and I like that, so that if somebody wants to partake of that, they can. So thank you for including that.
Thank you. Along with the memorial trees, I'm curious, those trees would be located only within the cemetery. Is there an option for them to request a tree be planted somewhere else in the community?
Yeah, so as part of the memorial trees and benches, we're going to be offering, I mean, at some point, the memorial area and the cemetery will have too many benches. So we're going to be trying to place them up where the new expansion is, so for people to sit, because it's quite a hike where those new plots are at the north end of the Union, or yeah, at the north end of the Union Cemetery. So we're going to place a couple of benches there right now, a couple in the memorial area, but we will give people the option of putting them along our walking trails. So I think it'll be nice. People want to stop and rest, and if the family is, you know, if they would like them placed along those trails, then I think it's a donation to our parks and it's a beautification of our town, and we would always accept that.
Councillor Dressler?
I know this was asked one time before, and I'm wondering if you can please maybe look into it. It was asked whether or not it's still all right to spread ashes in the Old Man River. If that could be looked into, because I know in Saskatchewan, or the Saskatchewan River, there's no bylaws saying that it's prohibited. So just for clarification, because I remember I was asked that one question before from a resident.
Okay.
And it's federal, so it's DFO, so I wouldn't have no clue.
Very good. All right, so motion's on the floor for first reading of bylaw 1957. If there's no further discussion or questions, we'll call it to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Moving on to item 4, National Economic Development Week proclamation. Our CAO, Anthony Burdett, would like to speak to this.
Sure. The Economic Development Alberta has invited us to recognize International Economic Development Week. As we know, economic development creates jobs and secures opportunities in the futures, and it's something, you know, a town like ours that has, you know, been seen a lot of success in the past number of years and continues to hope for that success and growth. You know, we can really take this opportunity to recognize International Economic Development Week as we continue on going forward in the future.
Very good, thank you. Anyone prepared to make a motion based on that recommendation? Councillor Wolstenholme, so moved. Any discussion, questions? I know our Alberta Southwest has been encouraging all the member communities to do the same, to see if we can get Alberta Southwest a little bit more on the map, because all our communities are engaged and involved. So I think there is definitely some good interest on the Alberta Southwest to work together as a region, and we do look forward to that. All right, so if there's no further discussion or questions, we'll call it to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on then to item 5, National Public Works Week proclamation, and we'll ask our CAO, Anthony Burdett, to speak to this as well.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is another recognition, and it's a recognition to celebrate our public works staff for all that they do and the efforts and the good work that they do for the support and the success of the town in the building up of our infrastructure and the maintenance and all of the wonderful work that our support staff do. And I believe these opportunities to recognize our staff are very important. It can be seen as a little effort, but I think it can go a long way in the fact that, you know, we're officially recognizing them, and this time to recognize them and others across the country in this specifically designated National Public Works Week, May 15th to 21st. But I think it's a good practice to really show our support to those who are working with us. And so, yeah, like I said, it was May 15th to 21st. And the recommendation is that the town of Fort Macleod hereby designates the week of May 15th to 21st as National Public Works Week. to pay tribute and celebrate our public works professionals and recognize their substantial contributions that they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life.
Very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion to that end? Councillor Dressler makes that motion.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, very good. Is there any thoughts on what, they had a lot of suggestions in their document on what we could do, should do for that week? Is there any thoughts on what that might look like besides the motion from council?
We haven't determined exactly what that's going to look like right now, but some sort of formal recognition and a showing of appreciation from administration and council.
Plant tours? Adrian's like, no.
Actually, I was more on the impression, I think maybe it would be awesome, maybe a nice thing to do is do an open house down at Public Works. Show off our equipment, show off what we have to provide our citizens, because a lot of them don't get to see it. So I think, and then of course, some of our other facilities, if there is anything that you do, but I think it would be great to show off our staff and doing maybe an open house and maybe a barbecue.
Help clean out the sewers one day.
No, but I think it'd be great, right? Because we do, where their tax dollars are going in regards to equipment, what it does and how it serves the community. But I think it's more open for everybody to see.
Yeah, we'll take that into consideration, and I mean, we'll try to definitely show our appreciation to the public works staff. Try not to make more work for them in showing our appreciation to them, but definitely I appreciate the thought.
Yeah. All right. Motion is on the floor. If there's no further discussion or comments, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on then to two parade items, Stavely and Granham. Do we want to accept them both as information and then we can put it in our calendars for further discussion, or how do we want to? You need actual answers today? Sorry. So we'll start with item 6 and we'll ask our Director of Community Services, Lisa Gillingham, to speak to these two.
Thank you. So for the Stately one that's come forward, it's their 110th anniversary. This one, they're just looking for a confirmation by June. So if we can just have council members check their calendars and see if somebody is available that we can confirm with them by the 1st of June. So we do have a few weeks there. It's more the Canada Day one. I would like to confirm with them that we're willing to do a donation if council so chooses to donate to that. The availability of a council member attending can be passed on later, but I would like to get confirmation just so that we can, we'll start getting more parade invites, I assume, coming in the next weeks and months, and we want to make sure that we're recording our donations and such appropriately, as we only have so much in that donations GL for council to use.
Okay.
So again, it's less about the confirming the dates and which council members want to go, but more the amount if they would like to donate to the Canada Day celebration.
Okay, very good. Well, let's start with the Stavely one. I think for now we could probably accept that one as information and make sure it gets in our calendar, and we can have, I'm sure someone can attend at that time. I'm not sure who and how, but if we can start collecting the dates and then sorting it out as we get closer, I think that would be good. Is someone prepared to make a motion to accept the Stavely invite as information? Councillor Edwards makes a motion. We'll call that one to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on then to the Granham and District Canada Day invitation from Wendy Kennedy. Sorry. Is there a recommendation at all from administration on that one?
Sorry, in the past, we've had a brochure asking for specific donation amounts based on a package, and I'm not sure if that was not included in this letter.
I see no reason why we couldn't support a minimum with the 500. that we
Which is
did
typically their
last.
gold level sponsorship, which is what
Yeah.
we have done in the past, and then we bumped it up the 1 year. I do know to the 500 a couple of years in a row. So
I think a large amount of our residents do attend those fireworks.
Yeah, yes, they do.
The parade is a little harder to say right now because I know depending on what kind of celebrations we have going locally as well. Okay, is anyone prepared to make a motion on the donation amount for the Canada Day Parade for Grantham? Councilor Wolstenholme moves 500. Correct. Any discussion? Any questions? We'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. If we can start collecting these invitations, maybe we'll try to sort it out as we get closer, yeah. All right. Next item, for Macleod Healthcare Auxiliary 125th anniversary. Our director, Gillingham, would you like to speak to this one as well?
I sure can. Thank you, Council. In 2017, Council recognized the Fort Macleod Auxiliary for 120 years of well-deserved service, and they're a wonderful service organization for our community. And this year in November, they will be celebrating their 125th year of operation within our community. So we would like to replicate what we had done for them in 2017, and if Council has any other suggestions or offers that they would like to do for the auxiliary, we'd be more than happy to do that, but we would be happy to invite them to council for formal recognition and a photo perhaps with council and a certificate for them to be able to hang in the hospital.
Yeah, that would be very good. I think at minimum we can do an invitation to council. I don't know if there's ideas for something more than that we can recognize them with that, but is anyone prepared to make a motion for recognizing the Fort Macleod Auxiliary for the 125th? Councilor Edwards. And if there's any suggestions on something else, just let us know, I think. Yeah. Councilor Edwards.
I know that the auxiliary is currently working on raising funds to do some sort of gathering area, an outdoor kind of protected area for the residents of the SDU, and then also for the community support beds, and that they're raising funds for a wheelchair accessible swing and a few things. So I don't know if we would maybe want to donate, you know, $250 or whatever, something towards that would be a wonderful gesture. I know they haven't asked us, but I think it would be wonderful to put that forward as recognition for their service over the years.
I can definitely reach out and see what's left in that. I do believe that they were a recipient of the Lethbridge Community Foundation grant, so I'm not sure what's been covered by that, but I can sure see if there's anything left in the project that could use some additional funding.
Yeah, I just know that they've asked Royal Purple and the Elks and, you know, a couple of the other service organizations to donate as well. So I feel like there's an opportunity there, even if we, you know, do planters or I don't know what, but to help in that endeavor would be wonderful.
Councilor Dressler.
I've heard in the past before, and I don't know who would be the authorizer to do that, but I heard of ducky derbies where the funds get raised to go towards helping our organizations or stuff like that, where people get to basically sponsor a duck, and then down the Old Man River, your ducky would go and first one in. I've seen a couple of that with doing some other communities, and it worked out really well, where they've raised over $20,000 in funds.
It's a great idea. However, we already have a duck race that's run by the Lions and Royal Purple every year. And the reason it's not done in the river is because they couldn't get permission to put the ducks in the Old Man River. So we have a duck race. But it's generally done in August.
Yeah. All right, so we do have a motion on the floor, and if there's further information for us to consider, we'll have that at a future date. So we'll call this one to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We did pull one from the consent agenda, the one letter that we had received. I don't know if we've looked at it too closely ourselves. I thought we should have some discussion or research on this. I'm not even sure how best to research it, or but I can understand that it seems like some of these utility fees are getting a little bit out of hand. So, do you have any comments, CEO Burdette?
I mean, I think the concern is real for sure. And the fact that some of the increasing costs, as mentioned in the letter and as we've been able to witness in our own communities, hit some of our nonprofits and the residents who struggle the most. And so whether council wants us to do a little more research into this, or whether we want to add our voice to the Utilities Commission in adding our voice to the Fox Creek, the town of Fox Creek, and other towns that have tried to have their voices be heard in these times. Yeah, but we're definitely willing to have some action in this area because we know it is affecting those most vulnerable.
Yeah, I think the Pioneer Lodge's letter as well just emphasizes, and I think they're both relating to the same thing. So I don't know if there's any, what avenue, like I know some may think it's because of our selling of our distribution network, but that really has nothing to do with these fees. They're tied to other regulators and suppliers. So, any thoughts from administration, or could we? I know we're not perhaps as directly impacted ourselves as a town. We know our residents are the ones that are. Councilor Dressler?
In regards to that, yes, we as the town of Fort Macleod would be fronting a lot of that cost, and so would residents and any of our facilities, especially with the carbon taxes that have been put on natural gas and any other fuels. The biggest thing, and I was reading an article that was done by the city of Calgary with their Go Green projects, is the cost of actually mining the materials that are used in these green projects versus what they're currently using right now is just astronomical. And it was open up a real big can of worms in regards to the environment. Where we are using green environment stuff and we're going to third world countries to do that to cut costs, but yet we're increasing our carbon costs here in Canada, where other countries are actually producing more carbon than we are as we ourselves. So, I think a letter to the Utilities Commission is a great avenue. I completely support it. But where do we start? Most of it, I know for a fact, is natural gas. A lot of residents got a big hit over the last with the carbon tax increase. Wasn't a lot on their electrical, but it was more towards fuel. And again, too, the same with the cost for farmers. When we look at it agriculturally around us, the cost of food is going to be going up. So a lot of people, though, with jobs and stuff like that, it's going to be very expensive. So anything that supports our community and those that are living in our community is well received.
Yeah, I think anyway that we present information, it needs to be pretty factual, right? So that's going to take some work to be able to research and make sure if we do send something, it's based on some evidence. So, Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing in that we need to make sure that whatever we note in our letter is factual, which is where I think we have the Willow Creek Foundation's letter to fall back on, in that they have some of our most vulnerable population that utilizes their services, and they've given some interesting data within that letter that we could then use as our platform to advocate for the increasing utility costs to come down. So, I mean, I feel like we do have that ability to take what we've got already and use that into creating a letter similar to what Fox Creek did, but specific to those residents in our community.
Yeah, besides Town of Fort Macleod's own data, which I think would be reflective of the community as a whole as well, right? So I'm not sure how that would look. So I don't know if we want to make a motion on this or request administration bring it back for further consideration, or if we want to Is anyone prepared to make a motion on that? I think it's probably best to report back to council for us to review the letter before it goes, right?
I think council's suggestion to, make sure we have the correct data, some good comparatives, and then draft a similar type letter, and then have it back for review by council. I think that's appropriate.
It'd be interesting to see the town's own utility fees, if they are the same kind of percentages, because that would. Okay. All right. Is anyone prepared to make a motion to that end? Councillor Edwards. Miranda, are you clear on the motion to request? Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll call it the question then. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And I believe there's no council reports on this agenda. Probably should have been, right? Oh no, that's, sorry, I keep forgetting that's in the consent agenda. I'm sorry. I'm hard to train. So that concludes the public portion of our meeting. We'll request a motion from council go to in camera for one personnel item. Councilor Edwards makes the motion. Thank you very much. All in favor? Motion carried.